Welcome, everybody. My name's Chad, and we are here with an awesome stream for you. We're going to be talking about scripting and actually about drawing storyboards from scripts. A little bit about me, just so that you guys are up to speed. I'm one of the mentors and moderator for StoryboardArt's mentorship. And in a moment here, I'm going to be introducing our awesome mentor, John, as we go through creating a storyboard from a script. So I hope you guys are ready for today's presentation, and let me bring them on up here for you. So, hey, John, how are you doing? Oh, go ahead and unmute yourself there.
Hi, everybody. How you doing? Nice to be here. Thank you all for coming. We're going to have a fun one today. Yeah, should I just roll right into it, I guess?
Well, so first, what I think I want to do is, why don't you give us a little bit of your background?
Okay.
As well.
So I was an animator for about 10 years, different studios. For 10 years. It's small studios, and did some work for some big studios. I worked on like the new DuckTales series as an animator. I'd worked on Cosmos, the Space-Time Odyssey, the Ricky Gervais show, all sorts of fun stuff. And then around the same time I was doing the DuckTales show, I switched over to Story. And I've been doing that now for, again, almost another 10 years, I think 8 years. And I've been pretty exclusively at Warner Brothers doing that. I had done storyboards in the past, and I've done directing shorts and short films and all sorts of different stuff, working on TV shows as well as features. I think I counted up the other day, I've worked on now 12 features at Warner Brothers. Not all of them have come out yet. Some of them will never come out, sadly, but that's the name of the game. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. Happy you guys are all here.
Awesome. Yeah, so we're gonna have a really good time here talking about drawing storyboards from scripts. For everybody who's new to these streams, what we're going to be doing is kind of a snapshot of what we do in our mentorship program. We're going to be spending probably about the next 20 to 30 minutes or so with a nice demo presentation here from John, and then we're going to follow that right up with a bit of Q&A. So have your guys' questions ready to throw into that chat, and we'll be trying to get to as many of them as possible in the second half of this presentation. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in and get started. Let me pull up your screen share.
The screen, that'd be great. So what we're going to do is look at an example of how I take a script page or two, just a short little bit of a sequence, and go through the process of creating thumbnails, and then how I might translate those thumbnails to storyboards, and just kind of cover the whole gamut of what goes on when you bring the script to the screen, right? How do you visualize a script? So I found, before even the film came out, this old original draft of Indiana Jones 4, back when it was called And the City of the Gods. And there's a lot of cool stuff in there that I was very disappointed didn't make it into the film. So I went through and I scanned and found one of my favorite scenes from this version of the film, which wasn't in the movie, that I wish just hadn't been in there. So what we're going to do is sort of go through my process of how do I bring this to the screen, right? So first thing I'm going to do is just kind of read through it. And so I'll go quickly, but I'll read through it with everybody, just to get a sense of what the scene is about. I know where it's coming from. And so basically, this is the point in the film. The basic structure was the same. Indy gets fired, right? And he loses his position at the place. In this version of the film, he goes on like a drinking binge, and he gets all drunk and he's all depressed. And then he starts to wander, I think, around the campus, and he ends up in the museum on the campus. And so then this is where it picks up here. So top of page 32 here. I'll just read it quickly. Indy walks to the center of the rotunda. The camera brings us into an over the shoulder of some unseen person. Indy says, "Now I ask you, does that sound reasonable? I mean, really, Marcus, have you ever met a more red, white, black, and blue guy than me?" He approaches the figure. As he steps close, camera comes around to reveal a life-size bronze statue of Marcus Brody occupying the center of the rotunda. It's a flawless likeness, capturing even the warmth of Marcus's crooked grin. Indy glances down at the plaque, which reads Marcus Brody, in memoriam, 1882 to 1952. Indy says, "Sure do miss you, pal. I wish you were here right now." Indy turns away, wiping mist from his eyes, and as he regards the museum, he moves back into the display cases containing rare and beautiful objects, some of which we recognize. In fact, there's the Cross of Coronado from The Last Crusade. Look at this place. Look what we made of it, you and me. The effort that went into these exhibits, and then reminiscing from object to object, fractured leg, dislocated shoulder, minor concussion. He stops at the next display, which contains a very familiar item, the small gold fertility goddess from Raiders. Lying in the display case next to it is Indy's famous leather satchel. It took some lumps getting this one back, huh? Half of this stuff is ours, pal. We paid for him in faith, hard work, and broken bones. In fact, a booze-fueled idea is forming. He tosses back a sly look. I'm taking him with me. He tries the display case, but it's locked. He unhooks a brass stanchion from its velvet rope, picks it up, and rams it right through the glass with a god-awful loud crash. Indy looks to Brody's statue, puts a finger to his lips. Shh, shh, shh. He grabs the satchel out first, slings it over his neck. Then he reaches for the idol and stops. He notices the goddess is sitting on a pressure-sensitive pad. Cued by Indy's look, the camera follows the connected wires around and then up inside the wall of a cabinet. Indy glances and sees an alarm bell mounted on the wall in the museum near the ceiling, one of dozens. Indy thinks a moment. Then a few quick cuts show Indy duplicating his attempt from the opening of Raiders. He whips out his handkerchief, lays it flat on the floor, dumps sand into it from a public ashtray, ties the ends to make a little bag of sand, and then we're back to the display case. Indy pauses, judging the weight of the idol by eye, as we saw him do years ago. He dumps a little excess sand from the bag to get the weight just right and does a smooth switch. For a moment, it looks like he makes it. Indy smiles. Then all the bells go off. He looks up. Crap. Right? Okay. So get a good flavor of the sequence. I've marked here, and this is what you'll see when you're handed a sequence. If like it goes on and they just want you board that far, they'll draw a line and an X through any other material on the page that you're not paying attention to. So I always, like I said, thought this was a very fun sequence. It's something I wish had been in the film. And so I can storyboard it, right? And I'm going to use that as this example here. So the first thing I do is keep some things in mind about where I'm coming from and where I'm going, right? I want to know the ins and outs of this. What sequence comes before this? What comes after? Where is this leading? So that I know like context of this. So the main thing before is that, you know, and I'll make notes right here on my script page, the first pass. When I do my thumbnails and any sort of notes, when I'm analyzing stuff, I will draw them right on the page. So I know that he got fired. So I'll just write down fired. And I know that he's drunk, right? So kind of something about the situation and something about his character. He's drunk, he's sad, he's bitter, right? And this is where I'm coming from emotionally. This is where I'm coming from like overall story-wise. Then I know that this scene, okay, so it goes off and then I can sort of scan ahead and see, okay, there's some other guy who hears the alarm and then people are going to come in and catch him. It's in this case, it's kind of a cutaway. And since we cut away, I don't, you know, all I know is that like it's going to be trouble, right? And that's as much as I kind of need at this point to sort of get my bearings on where I am. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is sort of scan through and highlight areas that are sort of the standout moments to me. Because when I thumbnail, I'm not doing continuity boards. I'm kind of like every board in sequence as if you'd see it in the movie. I'm kind of finding the highlights and the sort of key standout moments. And then I'm just going to start sketching very loosely using little stick figures what that shot might be, right? If anything is coming to mind visually for me when I read the script, right, then I will throw it down here. So the first one is sort of like this block here. They describe and they kind of do a lot of work for me here, which you don't always get in a script. but I pulled this example because it has a little bit of each type of thing that you get from a script, from your director. This is like telling you what the camera is doing, right? Camera comes here, camera comes here. But this one here stands out, the reveal of the Marcus Brody statue. So it feels like it's going to be a sort of pan shot. So there's going to be two main compositions that I'll sketch out. There's going to be a composition of Brody with his little smile, right? The statue of Brody, and Indy looking up at it, maybe, and maybe he has his hat on. I don't know, right? So there's that. But they also talked about, he approaches the figure, and it's over here. It's like over the shoulder of some unseen person. So I think they want a misdirect that this could be somebody standing in frame. So there's going to be some sort of composition like this, or maybe it's going to be tighter on him so that I really can't tell that it's a statue, right? And you're going to see Indy here somewhere in the room, right? And I'll just lay this down just as a thumbnail. And if you notice here, I'm not locking myself to any one idea, right? I started off thinking, oh, maybe this. And then as I'm doing it, I have a thought of, yeah, you know what, though? I don't want to reveal that it's a statue yet. So not this one. And so this is, part of the creative process is giving yourself permission to make mistakes and to fail. It's all about playtime and just being creative. And just like a kid playing a game, you're not afraid of making a mistake. You kind of want to do the wrong thing, find mistakes. That's the main process to me of storyboarding here. So I know from that, working backwards here, you don't have to work in a linear fashion at all. There's going to be the sort of shot leading to this, which is Indy walking through this space filled with all these display cases, right? So I know that there's probably going to be some display cases here. So I'll just sketch in a few spots, display cases, right? Walking through this rotunda that he's in here. And I'm just going to be very quick and loose. So this is all describing one shot, right? He's going to walk in, maybe there's a doorway back here, and he's going to be coming towards camera. I might start like giving myself little cues of like coming towards camera. Camera's pulling back, so I'll draw some arrows around the corner here. And this all could be one shot, right? So this shot here could be the camera sweeping around, right? And I'm kind of getting into the territory of where I might have to start thinking about the geography of this place. So I'm going to create a new panel here.
Real quickly, and there's something to that I kind of want to emphasize in there from what you were just showing, because you mentioned the quick and looseness of it. If you guys notice, I mean, like these are what thumbnails should be about. I know one of the common things a lot of newer artists tend to run into when they try to do their thumbnails is they get overtly detailed. They don't they get really into the rendering, really into the excessness of it without stepping back and just allowing the gestures and the shape language and the composition to take hold and be really just quick and loose about it. Mm-hmm. So it's great to see that you brought that up, and I just wanted to put a little extra point of emphasis to that looseness.
Thank you. So I drew just like an overhead map of what this room might be, just really loose. There's some display cases, there's columns around here, it's a rotunda. Indy is going to walk in from this doorway here towards the Marcus statue. And so the camera is going to be somewhere here, and then it's going to end here. And then for that other shot, this one, the camera will just basically swing around like this, right? To sort of capture, Indy will be standing here. So we'll capture this shot here. So we're going to go from this angle to this angle, right? So that's kind of just so I'm making sure that I have the geography in my head matching my thumbnails. I'll work that out, right? So I'll keep going through the script like this, and I'll just do this and finding those key moments. He turns away, wiping. Okay, look at this place. That's probably just going to be a simple overshot. I might not thumbnail that out yet. He stops at the next display case. which is like a familiar, yeah. So this one seems like a key moment, right? Where he stops at one case. So maybe maybe there's a shot of like, the display cases where we can see what's going on in them. There's like little idols or whatever is in there, right? And I'll sort of vary the position of these guys, and I'll have him walking through maybe like in a mid shot, right? And these are like on little standees, and I don't know if this is an up shot or straight on, but I'll try to throw a little bit of perspective in there and just get the sense of like, okay, he's be walking through, and he's going to kind of be like gesturing to the different cases as he's walking. So this will be like a tracking shot, right? So if I were to do like an A/B panel for myself, here's Indy walking, that display case, um, sort of recedes in the background, and he's like gesturing to this one and gesturing to that one, and sort of talking to himself, talking to the statue as he's walking through. So the camera is like coming towards me like this. And if these are hard to read for anybody else, that's totally fine, because this is for me. This is like my first thought process. It makes sense to me, and making it presentable to show to somebody else is a whole other step in the process. But I'm working out the idea here, right, of this shot. And then how do I get to that last case? And so immediately my mind thinks, okay, I could just have it be one of these other cases. And he stops and he looks at it. That's kind of boring, right? So I might want to tease the audience a bit. I might want to have a third panel where he stops and he looks kind of off screen, right? And he sees another case off screen, right? And then from there, maybe I cut to the case that has the idol, right? Maybe I tease the case in this shot. Here, I'm going to draw it over here just for space. Maybe this shot backs up a little bit more and you start to see a display case in the foreground, right? And it's like out of focus maybe, and he's there and he sees it and the other cases are here. I don't know. I'm experimenting right now. Anything is the right answer, right? Maybe I do both. Maybe I have it back up a little bit and sort of tease that out, and then I cut to this shot. And given that this is from the original, I'm if this were some other IP, I might recall a famous shot from some film that I love and be like, oh, it's just like that moment from this film. The nature of this script kind of lends itself to doing that because it is literally referencing a certain film. So I might go onto YouTube. Let me see if I can get my thing to pull this over here. I might get onto YouTube and look for that scene, that Raiders opening scene idol, right here, right, and just grab that clip. Going here. All right, I might go through and find that. How did they introduce it? And I might want to replicate that, both as a nod and because it just works, right? So here it is. That's one way they shot, in this wide shot, slowly pushing in. That's cool. And I think there's another shot coming up here too when he's approaching closer. And I think this is probably the more iconic one. Let me see. Yeah, here. So yeah, you know what? I'm just going to lift that. And that is 100% okay to do, right? You can lift things. It's paying homage, but it's also like somebody else figured this out first. So I think it is going to be this shot. I think my memory served me right. It was this kind of shot, and it's like a slow push in, right? So I'm drawing these arrows here to indicate that slow push, right? One thing around this section that jumped out at me when I was reading it is that some of these lines of dialogue didn't really resonate with me. And sometimes on a story team, you have the liberty to like adjust dialogue or skip over a line if you really feel strongly about it. And for some reason, this line about I took some lumps getting this one, it just feels a little too cheesy to me. So I'm just going to strike it out. and just make a creative decision here that like I really want him just to get to this. I want him to see the fertility statue, be kind of upset, and think half of this stuff is ours. Come on, we paid for this, right? And just get right to the punchline. I don't know. It's just a personal taste thing, but I didn't like it. Now this scene here too, sorry, this moment here too, where he tries to get the stanchion, right, is again referencing a scene from Indy. Where is my video here? Which is from that third movie, right? I think I pulled it up a second ago. It was ready to go. This scene, right? The whole X marks the spot scene where he finds the moment, and it's literally the same action here of where there it is, right? He finds the thing, he's there with Marcus, he grabs the stanchion, he pulls it over, and he's gonna, do this. So that's a cool shot too. And if I'm gonna pay homage to this, maybe this moment is gonna be, referencing that same exact shot where he goes and he grabs the stanchion, right? We see him come into frame, grab the stanchion, leave, come back to the idol, and he has that shot where he's like looking around, he's holding the stanchion, right? Like, okay, nobody better hear me do this, and then he's gonna smash the glass, right? And I could very well do that. Much like that line of dialogue, though, something about having nod after nod to a film again feels a little too fan servicey. And so I start thinking, well, what else could I do? Maybe what does Indiana Jones have at his disposal? If he's going to break the display case here because it's locked, there's a few things that I could do. So if I start thinking about this, going back to this stuff, he got fired, he's drunk, he's sad, he's bitter. The thing being behind a display case is kind of fun because it's encased in glass. And I'm just going to use this just to think this idea out. So if I have Indy, here, and to have the idol encased in glass, I might want to, how do I do this? Let's see. If he reaches for it, let's say he's so drunk he doesn't notice that it's encased in glass. And it might be a funny moment of him reaching and like bonk, right? I might throw in that gag there where he like reaches and touches. He's like, oh, damn it. There's a stupid thing. He taps on it or something, and maybe that's the right angle for that. Maybe it's really like a profile angle of the thing in glass. He reaches it. Maybe I want to hide the fact that it's in glass, right? Maybe I want to show, maybe I'm like over the shoulder of the idol. We're in the glass case and I see Indy and I see him like reach and then bonk, hit the case. That's the one. This is the one I want to do, right? This is just sort of, I'm just thinking out the different, again, maybe this, maybe that. And then how do I put all this stuff together? How do I hide all this stuff? So immediately from this, I'm finding a gag here that wasn't in the script, right? I'm finding things that are like sort of storyboarding in between the lines, looking for opportunities that weren't originally thought of when the screenwriter wrote this, because script is one thing and it's just, it's made to convey just the bare bones information. It's just a guide. And most good directors want you to look for opportunities like this. And now I'm back to the velvet rope issue and the stanchion thing. And I don't want to put a hat in a hat in a hat, recycle gag. So I've come up with this gag that he's drunk, right? And hits the glass. So what does he have at his disposal to break the glass other than a stanchion? I think about Raiders when he was facing off that guy and the sword and he like pulls the gun out, right? And so maybe he does that. Maybe he's frustrated. He like thinks for a second. So he's going to be like in this pose and you see him think, looking this way, looking that way, confusing. And then, oh, I got it. And he like reaches for the gun that he has, right? And God, that's a terrible drawing. But it doesn't matter because this is an idea, not a drawing. He pulls the gun out, right? And then, maybe there's a moment where you see it clearly. He's going to hold the gun, and he's like a little drunk. And you're like, oh man, this is going to be bad. And then maybe he, points the gun like he's going to shoot it. I don't know. These ideas are literally just coming to me in the moment. Where he's going to shoot the glass. But then maybe he's going to stop and second guess himself and be like, wait, what am I doing? And I can get a lot of funny stuff again with him, looking down the barrel of the gun, oh, what? I'm going to shoot the thing? No, that's not a good idea. And then at some point he'll smash the glass, right? With the butt of the gun or something. So he'll flip it around and we'll get a shot. And maybe this is where I will reference this shot here, right? I'll save this part of the gag where instead of holding a stanchion, he'll be holding the gun with the butt of the gun and the same sort of cool upshot that they had, and then smashes it, right? So I've worked out that gag in my head. The drawings are not pretty at all. It's just the ideas. They're stupid little stick figures, right? But I like the idea. And he can do the same shush to Marcus. That might be a fun little shot there of him turning, and you see Marcus, his statue maybe looking disapproving down at him, and another shot of Indy looking up, kind of doing the shush. Maybe you see over the shoulder of Marcus. It'd be funny too. I'm just getting this idea now. If this were kind of the same shot as back here, right? So if I have the same angle of Marcus, because it's just a statue, right? But if I sort of engineer his expression to when you first meet it, without the context of him breaking the glass, just looks like, stern professor with a crooked smile. And then I'll repurpose this exact shot again down here, but seeing it the second time with that same expression, it has a different meaning to it. Especially with Indy shushing him, and you cut to him, and the audience will just feel that sort of little bit of disapproval. So anyway, I'll go through the rest of this.
So
I'll do one last beat here. Go ahead, Chad.
No, go ahead and do your last beat, and then we'll just start jumping into some questions and stuff like that, because I have a bunch of questions.
Great. So I'll just skip ahead to this last one here, because when I read this, I had the same feeling of this feels like too much. It feels like too much. We had the idol, we had the stanchion, we have the same satchel, and he's going to take that out and sling it over his neck, and then he's got to go. What was this? He takes a handkerchief, and then he dumps sand from an ashtray, and I'm like, oh, this is just so much. This is taking me out of the moment, right? And Frank Darabont is an amazing writer, one of my idols, but we need to figure out a more graceful way of doing this. So again, I'm thinking, okay, so we're going to get to the point where he's going to have the iconic shot of him, looking at the idol and weighing it in his mind, right? Of how do I get this without setting off the alarm? It's on a little pedestal, right? This shot. So I'm going to do this, and I'm going to keep the framing because I'm going to pay homage to this much. And then I'm thinking again, what's going on in this scene? He got fired. He's drunk. He's going to get this drunken idea. I was like, what if he's just carrying around a bottle of alcohol and he's taking swigs of alcohol, right? And so he has this bottle here filled with liquid that he can dispose of by drinking it, right? And so now I want that gag to play out the same way, except now he's using that bottle of scotch or whatever it is, and he's looking back and forth at the scotch and the idol, and he's going to take a swig instead of dropping the sand. So I'm going to mirror everything about that shot, and I'll go back when I storyboard it, look at that shot for shot, and instead of him dripping sand, I'm going to get all those same shots. Probably I'll have to modify that one. Let me see, do I still have it up here? I'm not sure what happened to it. There's that one, oh, here it is. And let me just pull it up really quick here. Raiders idle scene. Skip the video. 1 second. Sorry, guys. See if I got it here. Okay, so here. So I'm gonna do all of this stuff of him getting down. Oh, that shot of the feet. Right. Okay. So when I storyboard this, I'm just gonna keep a note of all this stuff here, of him sort of walking around clumsily over these things, not because there's booby traps, but because he's drunk. And I'm gonna have him stumbling through in exactly the same way, probably the same shot. I'm gonna use this as like Marcus watching him stumble. I'm going to use this close-up shot of his feet stepping through, not carefully, but again, clumsily. I'm going to have him come into frame just like this, except he's going to be like wobbly and like just really acting stupid and drunk. So I'm going to recreate all this. And then I'll probably do this for pulling the gun. And then at some point when he has the bottle, I'll have that shot where he takes the sand, except he's going to hold the bottle and he's weighing it back and forth. And then that close-up shot of the sand, it's probably the one thing I'm going to change. So I'm just going to make a note for myself that instead of that close-up shot of the sand, I'll do a similar shot behind him of him taking a swig. Right? There's the bottle. Drinking from behind him. You can see the idol here. And this is in the foreground. This is his arm here. And he's taking a swig to make the weight right. Right, and then it's all going to play out the same, and he's going to switch it with the bottle, and it's all going to be that's how we're going to do that. Questions? I could show how to go on to how do I take one of these thumbs and make it a composition, but I mean,
we have a bunch of questions that are in the chat here, and
I see the
so
chat.
I think this is
here. Oh wow, I had on the
so I got the chat here. I'm going to bring up some of these questions and we'll go ahead and answer them. And actually the first one, you kind of talked about it. You just kind of bring it up a little bit there. And that is from Sanjana. And that is, do these thumbnails end up being final shot choices?
Sort of. They end up being definitely the inspiration for final shot choices. And I can very quickly try to demonstrate that. So let's just say I'm going to do the shot just because it's here in front of my face. I'm going to jump over here to have a clean panel. And in effect, I'm just going to copy this over. Right. And there it is. So yeah, so I'll use this as like the basis of a shot. I'll knock back my thumbnail a bit. I'll start now drawing this in like the right aspect ratio, right? So I'm just going to eyeball it, but let's say this is like your standard 185 or what have you. I'm going to start thinking about like my rule of thirds, right? And there's grids that you can lay on here. There's other grids that are like this, like it's a dynamic symmetry grid that has all these other lines. But basically, I'll start to recreate this composition again in very stick form fashion so that it's clear and a little more tidy. Right, I'm just getting basic shapes here. I'm doing my blocking. I'm thinking about my staging. The idol is going to be here. In the background, I'm going to start thinking about perspective. This is probably a pretty long angle lens shot. So there's not going to be a ton of perspective lines. And the background's probably going to be blurred out. There's his hat. Like that, right? And I'll just sort of shade that in so that I have my shapes, right? So that's like step one in the process. And then I'll go in and refine it and refine it and refine it. One thing that I did here without mentioning it was like, I try to back up the camera from my thumbnails. So like here in the thumbnail, I'm just putting a frame down and drawing the idea. I will very intentionally back it up anywhere between 10 and 25%. And what it does is it automatically makes that thumbnail a little bit more dynamic, right? And speaking of being more dynamic, something I didn't even do in here was think about perspective, right? I'm thinking about blocking. So my next stage might be knocking this back. And same frame. I know what my blocking is. Now I'm going to pick a vanishing point, right? And sketch in all these other things. So now the idol is going to be standing here, and I know that it's going to be on a table that has perspective. And then he's going to be here. I might even make him smaller, right? Just to sort of marry this all together. His arm is going to come here. The idol is like watching him, whatever. Right? So hopefully this answers. And
Yeah, I think this is a great answer.
pay attention to how loose I'm still being here. Even my first pass of thumbnails are this. Sorry, my first pass of boards. My roughs are oftentimes this loose. I might get in there and start adding a little bit of tone, maybe, probably not. But so yeah, that's how I go from this guy to this, which is a little more thought out, right? Yeah, great question.
Yeah.
What else we got?
Yeah, it's a great because it goes into the exploration side of things, right? Your thumbnails are just that. It's getting that basic idea down. And then as you work your way through it, you really start to explore it. And then even when you go into your cleanup with like your director or whatever, the director may even come back and be like, you know what, this is cool. I really like this idea, but let's try it from this angle or from this or this, right? And so by the time you get to the end, you know, maybe this started off as a profile shot like this, and then, but then maybe instead it all of a sudden becomes, you know, a different, a wide angle shot or
Yeah.
something, or
Yeah.
it's a shot that has 100mm lens where
Right.
you're faintly seeing Indiana Jones in the foreground and you see specifically the bottle and the drink. And then you're framing with the idol in the background. Like it's almost like the idol's giving it a disapproving
Right.
look,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
You could do that.
You
You have
know?
these statues, kind of look at it the whole time. You start to come up with these motifs and these themes in your work.
Exactly. And that comes in the later part. And so that's what ends up might being what the final version becomes.
Right.
So that, yeah, but that was a great question. So the next question is coming from Mavusa Art. And it's actually about how good or accurate does your art have to be successful in this industry? How, besides just an understanding of the use of cinematography and storytelling.
Right.
In
Okay.
other words, do you need to be a Da Vinci to be able to do this stuff?
Yes. No,
No.
you don't. Not at all. I mean, you can see here, my drawings look terrible, right? At some point, I will bring it to a stage that's good enough, right? And this is getting into a topic of like shorthand, right? If I have a character design, you know, and I'm gonna draw Indy here. Let's say he's looking at camera, like there's gonna be a point where like I'm gonna do something to represent this character that's gonna be, you know, a good enough drawing, but like it's not gonna be the greatest drawing you've ever seen. It's not gonna be Leonardo da Vinci. It will have basic understanding of, you know, structure, of volume, of gesture, just some very fundamental drawing principles, simple shapes, right? But like if I'm starting to storyboard this guy out, you know, this is approaching what I would call like a final panel, right? You can see, let me turn these off here. Right? You can kind of see the shorthand here of everything that I'm drawing here, the eyebrows, the hat, the expression, the face, like this like skull shape that I'm doing. This is like my basic character that could become anybody, right? If this is, you know, if I put a hat on him, he's Indiana Jones. If I elongate his chin a little bit and give him a bunch of bushy hair, it's Shaggy Rogers from Scooby, right? It's just you can do anything with this basic shape. So it's kind of about mastering a shorthand rather than being a master draftsman. Obviously, the better draftsman you are, it'll help, but and it'll help to be able to reduce stuff down, kind of, you know, like how Picasso's later work, he started off as like a fine artist. I'm not discouraging anybody from doing life drawing and gesture drawing and fine arts. It will only help you. Do you need to present that? Does your work need to be that good? No, not at all. These storyboards are quick disposable drawings that are probably going to get thrown in the trash. And you're going to have to redraw 1,000 different versions of the same thing over and over and over. These drawings are not precious. They're not pretty. The stuff you see in those art of books is like made for the art of books. Nobody is doing those during production. That's like afterwards when they're like, hey, we like that sequence you did. We're going to have you, or even a better artist, draw over your stuff to put it in the book. Make it presentable, right? Yeah, another great question. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the art book thing, because you know, a lot of times we see these art books. You're going to get a lot of great educational information out of them about composition and all of that. But in terms of the final finished product, even like when you see animatics that come up on like on like YouTube or, you know, Facebook or whatever, when they're like, yeah, here's the animatic for this awesome thing, that's probably been zhuzhed up because they've got a specific production pipeline and stuff. Which brings me to the next question.
Yes.
From Nicole, what is the approximate turnaround for storyboarding a movie script or a scene?
Oh, like the time?
Mm-hmm.
Like the time it takes? Yeah, it varies from studio to studio and production to production. I've found recently it's been about on a good production, it's like so a page of a script is about a minute of screen time. And that generally should take, depending on the complexity, about a week and a half to do. More recently, it's kind of been bumped up, I think, because we're using all these amazing tools at our disposal and budgetary reasons. So it might anywhere between 1 and 2 pages a week, right? Is to kind of be expected. And how many storyboards that is, I don't know. Anywhere between 500 to 1,000, maybe, depending on the sequence. Again, it fluctuates. But that's about, and that's for feature. It's been a while since I've done TV, but I imagine it's close to that. The line between feature and TV is really getting thin these days. But yeah, so that's about what's to be expected.
Yeah, like, and especially with like the TV, I think it really is going to depend on what type of TV we're talking about. If you're going for something like Arcane, right? I completely agree with you that that line between feature and TV is probably razor thin, because they have a much larger time frame to work with on something like that. With what they're trying to do, they're basically making 9 mini movies, right? Or full length films, rather than like say a Bob's Burgers or a Simpsons, where it is more sitcom TV. And something like that is probably going to be a 4-week, like as a story artist, probably 4 or 5 weeks to do the script, right? It really depends on what they on what the necessities of the job are. But yeah, I think that's a good question to kind of get a good idea of you know, of trying to get an idea of what type of work, you know, the actual depth of work that needs to be involved time wise into this. The next one, coming back to thumbnailing, but a little bit more on even during, like, as you were showing us the kind of like your process of your thumbnailing process and stuff. And this person, a host, asks, is it often to make a rough thumbnail immediately with the team there with you? Or do you normally get some time alone to work through it and clean it up before they see it for the first time?
Oh, yeah. It's very rare that you're doing thumbnails in the room. Sometimes if you're really talking, that happens a lot in the revision process, or sometimes in the launch if like your director or your head of story has a very specific vision for something, you'll start to talk about thumbnails, right? And they will do a sketch on a whiteboard or on a piece of paper or whatever, or you'll do a sketch, you'll present it. You'll be, oh, kind of like this. And they'll go, yeah, I like that. Perfect. You got it. Go. But most of the time, you're launched on something, and then you go off and you do it at your pace in your space. Yeah, and before you do that, you'll work out a whole pass of thumbnails before you show anybody. Which is why I was saying earlier, like when I was doing really, really rough stuff, that like I don't show this to anyone because I'm in that space. I'm in my office, just working it out myself. Yeah, great question again. Thank you.
Awesome. So Next question is coming back to Mavusa asking a little bit more about like the positives and negatives to storyboarding, I guess, in a sense. This one's a little bit looser of a question. What's the best thing that you think is that works with storyboarding besides the drawing? Like, what do you think is the best thing about it? And what do you think is the worst thing to deal with when it comes to storyboarding outside of the millions and millions of revisions?
The best thing about storyboarding was the question, and then the worst thing. I mean, yeah, the worst thing. I'll start with that. What is the worst thing? It's pretty fun. I guess the worst thing is having to overcome the different learning curves and sort of creative humps of getting used to the idea that storyboarding is, like I said earlier, like a disposable thing, that you're going to work so hard on something. You're going to get this sequence done. It's going to be polishing. You put all your ideas in there. You think they're great, and it's all going to get shot down, and it's all going to get revised, and it's all going to get redone. It could be taken off your plate and handed to somebody else. It could get cut from the film entirely, and sort of learning to not take that personally and just understanding that it's really part of the process. That it's not about you and your drawings and your work. You're doing your job just fine. In fact, you are enabling whoever's vision this is, whoever's dog this is, to see what works and what doesn't. And that's really your job. And I think coming to that point where you do realize, look, this isn't my dog. This is their dog. And if they want me to do something for their dog, fine. I'll have my opportunity to direct, and I'll have the vision one day, but it's not this day. So that's kind of the worst part of it, I guess I would say. Challenging part of it. The best part is, that you have so much influence and control over this work when it does work out and when things are working, to make decisions about a film. And you're kind of, as a story artist, you're kind of wearing so many hats that you really do just feel like a filmmaker. And so it just scratches that itch of like wanting to be a filmmaker. You get to be a director, a cinematographer, an actor, the lighting crew. You get to be a set dresser, a costume designer. You get to be a gag artist. You get to be a writer. All these things are kind of what the story artist does. You get to be a script reviser, right? You get to do all sorts, like the way I modified the script as I was storyboarding, like, and the way I'm staging stuff. It's all, I mean, you get to sort of lay the groundwork of what the film is going to look like, what the film is going to be, how it's going to be edited, even, is based on your storyboards, because you're essentially figuring out the edit in storyboard form. They might swap things around here and there, but it's basically going to be what you designed. So having that sort of creative input is very rewarding. And it's also just a really fun job. Seeing your work finally come to life after having drawn for a couple of years, like you go to work and they pay you to draw, is awesome. And then seeing it on the big screen and then seeing the audience react to it, I don't know what other job you're going to describe to me that's better than that. Yeah. Cool question.
That's great answer. And I completely agree. I know one of our other mentors, Steve Lee, has often referred to story artists as being the first directors. And it is completely true, because you're the one that gets to have the first real ability to interpret a script. Director's going to come in, the actual director is going to come in later and make their revisions and adjustments or suggestions and stuff to help tweak it in the way that aligns to their vision. But you're the one that gets to have that opportunity to really tell the story first. And it's really a great way, especially for those of you who want to become directors. Being a story artist to start is a great way to get towards into that, because you get to make those types of decisions, because you do need to have an understanding of how everything works, right? Because especially like say you're doing live action, right? You're not gonna sit there and try to draw something that there's no chance that they're going to be able to film that on set, right? You're doing this super amazing crane sweeping shot, and then it's like, yeah, this is a discussion between two people over a cup of coffee. Right? You know, you get to have the understanding of being able to do that, and you get to learn so much from that. And it ultimately allows you to be able to go into the more directorial side. But yeah, that's this is a was a great question. So let's move on into the next one that I have here from Ankita. And I might tweak the way this is worded a little bit, but overall, it says understand the importance of experimentation during the thumbnailing process for storyboard. Sometimes that can lead to indecisiveness.
Hmm.
Absolutely true.
Yeah.
How do we combat that?
That's fun. How do you combat that? I like to combat that by taking as long as you can to storyboard. And that sounds like I'm saying to procrastinate, and I am. There's some sort of magic that happens when, yeah, you sort of let your mind percolate, whether it's sketching out every thumbnail possible, whether it's finding every piece of reference possible, or just walking away from your thumbnails. I was going to mention one of the steps in my process is after I do all these thumbnails, I will put this aside for like a day, 2 days, 3 days, and think about everything and just let it marinate, right? And I will, knowing my capabilities as an artist about how fast I can draw something, how much time I actually need at bare minimum to produce the work, I will go right up until that line. And there's something that happens because you're giving yourself a limitation, which forces creative decisions that you would not have thought of if you decided that. There's a great speech by John Cleese where he talks about this, where it's like there's this time to, I forget his phrasing, but time to wander and to wonder and to just explore, and every decision is open, and there's a time to, okay, no, this is it, we're doing it now, and we have to do it now, we're doing it this way. And he talks about it's as if you're going to be like running over a huge ditch in the road. The whole time when you're running, if the ditch is here, the whole time you're running, you can think about every possibility, right? And you can be maybe this, maybe that, maybe I'll do this, maybe I'll do that. Once you're here and you have to jump over the ditch, you can't second guess anything. You can't be, and putting yourself, so giving yourself this sort of runway to get to this point of pressure of like, it's now or never, I have to jump, and I'm going to jump this way. That's kind of what you're doing with storyboarding. And so it doesn't matter how much you wander and stray and figure out the 20 different versions of the same shot. When you're down there, when you're down to the wire, it'll come to you which one is the right one. And a lot of this too is just like experience, of like what works, what doesn't, sort of learning as you go. Again, giving yourself permission to fail. It really helps the creative process. That's
Awesome.
where you learn, when you fail.
Yeah, that's great answer. And yeah, I think giving yourself that time is great. And then another thing too is when it is time, something you may want to do for yourself is put down a deadline for yourself at some point. You don't want it to be like, okay, tomorrow this has to get done. Give yourself enough time to be able to do the exploration that you need. But then at one point in time, being like, I'm coming close to what I need to have for my final decision. This is what I got. It's time to make that decision.
Right.
Because that's going to force you to have to be decisive rather than you constantly going into that. But it was a great question there. I think we have enough time for, I think, one, maybe two more questions. So the next question I've got in here that I want to get to first, and if we have enough time, we'll get to one more, is this one from Cow Puppy. When is a good time to use dynamic camera angles in your scene, if at all? How do you know when you need one? Oh, we got kids in the background. While you're doing that, I'm going to do my answer for this and then let you answer it. The answer to that question is and it's going to be completely kind of vague on a sense. It's when the story calls for it, right? Is there a reason for why you're doing it? We don't ever want to be arbitrary with our camera angles. When you go for something because it's just like, oh, this looks cool, then it's probably going to fall flat, because what we're thinking about is emotional impact on the story, not so much just the cool dynamicness of the camera shot. And so that's, I think, one of the things that you want to think about is when you're doing your shot is, what is the purpose of this shot, and what am I trying to sell with it? And that kind of going to help you inform whether or not you need a dynamic angle or a really good camera move or anything like that. John, what about you? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, there we go. Yes, everything you said. Yes. Sorry. What you want to do is, so a dynamic angle usually suggests something, like you're saying. So you want to be intentional with what you're suggesting. So you never want to just design a dynamic shot because it's cool, right? You want to sort of reverse engineer yourself into a dynamic shot by kind of approaching storyboards from clarity first, just like the staging. What is clear, and then what is the emotional state of the character, and then what do I want the audience to feel about that emotional state of the character, right? So if I have a shot of like a character that just won a trophy, right? They just won some award. My first thought might be, okay, so they're going to have to hold up the award, and there it is, and they're going to have a big smile on their face. It's going to be great. Their arms going to be up, and it's going to be triumphant. They're like, yay, I did it, right? And that feels fine. It's kind of a flat angle, but I put them in the center. Their arms are up. They're happy, clear expression. But if I really want to push it, and I really want to put them with the character, I might want to make it a bit of an upshot. I might want to be a little closer to them to really see their expression, right? And they could still have that same pose with the arms up, and maybe they're holding the trophy down here just for better staging, right? There's the trophy. They're holding it. And then I'll try to think of this as an upshot, because upshots are more dynamic. They feel heroic. This is starting to feel a lot more impactful. But it's because I'm thinking of what I want the audience to feel, what I want the character to feel. Like, I want them to feel like a hero here. I want the audience to literally look up to them, like metaphorically, look up to them, rather than this shot, which is a bit more objective, right? I'm not feeling anything with this shot. I'm starting to feel something with this shot, and you can just push it either way, right? Yeah, does that help answer that guy?
I think that's a great answer. Yeah. So I guess the final question that I'm going to pose to you for this, and I guess it's more of a final thoughts thing, because we're raging here at the end. We only have a couple of minutes left.
Okay.
And that is, what final thoughts, what final piece of advice would you want in regards to what we've been talking about today? Would you want to give everybody before we hop?
It's just broadly advice. This job is very hard to do. It's very competitive. It's a very specialized skill. And you really have to put in the work and have the understanding to be able to do the job, right? And there's 1,000 other people out there who are just as qualified, if not more, than you. But by putting in that work and really sticking with your passion, if you are passionate about it, it is just, like I said earlier, one of the most rewarding jobs that there is out there. I've had all sorts of jobs in this crazy world. This is great. This is what I want to be doing. This was like, very similar to like the dream of just being a filmmaker that I had when I was a kid, when I first started out. And having done it now for almost 20 years, I still feel that way. But you have to I've seen so many people get into it, get jaded, kind of fall out of it. You got to kind of find ways to reinvigorate it along the way and to keep learning. I think maybe that's my singular advice here. Be passionate about it, and don't forget to keep learning, because there's always something to learn. There's always something to learn and then reinvent a stage of the process, or interventions brought to the process. don't be afraid to learn. Be humble enough to learn and to keep learning, even when you have 20 years under your belt. I'm still learning. You know, I subscribe to podcasts. I go to life drawing. I go to gesture drawing. I talk to my peers. We have workshops at work. I learn things all the time, and I try to incorporate it in my work. And then I try to pass it on to you guys and get you guys a leg up on all this stuff through the mentorship, so that you're kind of coming in a little higher than I was, so that the whole medium, it's really, you know, it's altruistic maybe, but like I want everything to be elevated up. I'm tired of scrolling Netflix and just watching garbage. I want you guys to bring me something great. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad you bring that up because yeah, you know, the constant learning and stuff like that is something that we always want to be doing. As I had a coworker one time tell me, the moment that you stop learning is the moment you become stale. And so you always want to continue to be learning your craft. And a couple of good ways here that we can do it. Of course, you've seen this one, which is kind of like I said at the beginning of our of this stream, a snapshot into kind of what we do in our mentorship with with our live sessions. Keep an eye out. We're going to be talking more about the mentorship in a little while as we prepare for new registration for that. But another way that you can constantly keep learning and connecting and talking to not just John or myself, but a lot of other story artists who are going along the same path is with our Discord channel. And I just tossed up a link here, storyboardart.org/forums, leads you to the ability to be able to join our Discord, where our buddy Wahab, who I know is in the chat here, throws down art challenges. Some of our mentors will pop in from time to time, give their advice on various things. And really, it's a good hub to be able to learn and continue to grow and build your network, which is also very important in this industry. So I highly recommend you join into that Discord. There's no charge. It's a free learning tool from us. And have some fun in there. But that's what we got for today. Until next time, my friends, it's been a pleasure chatting with everybody here. Great questions from the chat. Great presentation here from John. You know, we're going to be having some more of these sessions pretty soon here. And but until then, we will see you in that Discord, and board on, everybody. Take care.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.